Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timo Parker. I'm a vocal coach and I'm here to help you improve your singing voice. Today's video is about our tongue and what our tongue should actually do while we sing. So we're gonna explore the function of the tongue when we are singing, where it should be, and what we can do with our tongue to improve our vocal health. So let's dive right into it. So the tongue plays a very important role for us singers. It can create consonants, vowels, and it actually can also influence the type of frequencies we create while we sing. So first, let's take a look at where the tongue is actually situated and where it should be when you are singing. So the tongue is connected to your hyoid bone. You will see it in the graphic here. So we know that our tongue is a very powerful muscle that can actually create very different shapes. We can do a lot of things with it, and there's a specific reason why we can do it. So there are actually some disadvantages when you are speaking or singing with a low tongue. And this is what happens. So inside of your larynx, we have the vocal cords and the false vocal cords, which more or less looks like this. So we have vocal cords and false vocal cords. In between, we have something that is called laryngeal ventricle. So those ventricles are, so to say, our first sound room where we create frequencies and then send them up through our air pipe out to the audience. So if your tongue is in a low position, the tongue itself will partly be in your throat, in the back of your throat, and also everything that is connected to the hyoid bone or to the tongue, all this tissue is just gonna fall down. And that means that this tissue could potentially pressure the false vocal cords to come further down, and that is the problem, that we maybe create contact with the false vocal cords, and also we are closing off this ventricle. Singing wise, it's not very clever to have the tongue in a very low position, because risk of injury that we actually pressure the false vocal cords downwards towards the vocal cords, and we can create friction there, and also we are closing up our most important sound room within our larynx. And the other disadvantage is, since we have quite some tongue mass in the back of our throat, this mass actually functions as a filter. So all the frequencies that pass through your air pipe will also pass through the part where the tongue is in the back of your throat. And the tongue tissue is actually quite soft. That means it absorbs sound very well. So you're also absorbing a lot of sound in the back of your throat if the tongue is not in a higher position. So while I was editing this video, I realized I haven't mentioned the epiglottis, which is actually super important. In the graphic, I think it's in a light blue color. And when the tongue is in a low position, we actually push the epiglottis further down, which also contributes to a not optimal sound reflection. I just thought I mentioned that at this point. So let's jump back into the video. And only because of those reasons, it already makes sense to consider to sing and speak with a high tongue. But there are even more reasons, which I will come to later in this video. So if the tongue is in a mid position or a high position in your mouth, that means something like this. So if we are speaking and singing with a high tongue, which actually looks pretty much like this, we have the tongue in the mid position, higher position in your mouth, and the sides of the tongue almost have constant contact with the molar teeth on the top. That means you have very small movements that actually happen. So all the negative aspects of a low tongue we can actually reverse and put into positive aspects, because if we raise the tongue, on the other hand, we increase the space between the vocal cords and the false vocal cords, so we open up the ventricles, and also we get rid of this filter in the back of our throat. And also, because we are singing with a high positioned tongue, the sound that comes out of your air pipe gets reflected on your hard palate on the top and goes directly out. And as the name already said, hard palate, it's a bit of a harder material. You can feel it also if you touch it with your tongue up here. And hard material reflects sound very well. So that means we have the sound coming from your air pipe to the hard palate directly out. And the tongue can function a little like a tube, where it makes the exit a bit smaller or a bit bigger depending on which vowel. And this influences also the frequencies that you create. And talking about frequency, there is a huge advantage by singing with a high tongue, and that is that we create a certain frequency that is very characteristic for the singing voice. And actually no other acoustic instrument is very strong in that frequency. And that's about 3000 hertz. It could be 2008 to 3300, like in that range more or less. So when we open up the ventricle and have the tongue in the higher position and get the reflection just on the hard palate, we are most likely to amplify those specific frequencies, which makes it possible to hear our voice in an orchestra, over a huge grand piano or other acoustic instruments. The only exception here are electronic instruments like synthesizers that can create those frequencies, but acoustic instruments most likely are not very strong in this frequency range. So that means you can make yourself more audible, not by singing louder, but by using the right frequencies with your voice. So you should always avoid to speak and sing with a flat tongue or with a low tongue, and especially don't start pushing anything, especially in your lower teeth, like something like this, where you push your tongue against the front teeth on the lower jaw. It just creates more tension, and it can also have the effect that I was just describing before when our tongue is lower. And since we are increasing even more tension by pushing, it can create even more problems. So just stay away from it and learn to sing and speak with a high tongue. So how do we get there? How can we train our tongue? I think the best way to train our tongue is actually through speaking, and the easiest and best exercise that you could do is just practice in front of a mirror, and then you try to have your tongue at all times in a mid position. So that means you come closer to a mirror. For me it's the camera now. So first you start finding the mid position in your mouth. So that means the tongue, you can stick it slightly out, and then you try to widen it so all the tongue mass is really in your mouth. And from this is your default position. So from there you try to articulate different things. And the difficulty will be at the beginning that you will be able to maybe create the shape, but as soon as you create a different shape, the default shape, this wide position, is pretty much erased from your mind and you have to find it again. So speak very slowly and try to find the right positions. It could sound a little silly in the beginning, but decreasing the tempo is very crucial for this exercise. And always keep your jaw relaxed and try to create all the consonants and all the vowels with a high tongue. So this is probably the best practice that you can do to really get your tongue involved into the speaking process, and then it's also going to be much easier to transfer to singing. If you feel a bit more confident, maybe there are some situations in your life where you could afford sounding a little silly in the beginning, where you could just try out talking to someone and having the focus of having a high position with your tongue. Another benefit of speaking with a high tongue, also singing with a high tongue, especially if you're into rap, this could be very interesting. You're going to be able to pronounce more clearly and also to pronounce faster. Because if you go through the alphabet, you will realize that all consonants are actually created either through a popping sound with your lips, like B, or closing your lips, like M, N. N is actually with the tongue. And you have a lot of consonants with your tongue, like D, T, D, T, where your tongue actually makes contact with your hard palate and creates this consonant. And there are just 3 exceptions in the English language, as far as I know. If I missed one, leave it in the comment section below. And that is K, Q, and X. They are created with a throaty sound, like K, Q, X. There are also some special positions, so to say, where your tongue should be for the vowels, but I'm going to cover that in a different video, because I already see that this video is getting a bit out of hand and a bit long. So let's tackle this topic for another video. So now you know where your tongue should be when you're singing or when you're speaking. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. I have more voice training content planned on this channel, so make sure to not miss out. Thanks for watching, and I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.